Hey everybody, Scoutcrafter here again. It's Wednesday and a little brisk today, about mid-50s. I love this kind of weather, you know, and this is the kind of weather where the iced coffee goes away for the rest of the winter and now it's hot coffee. Oatmeal in the morning, you know, things to warm you up right away, and I actually like it. It's very cozy and I enjoy being in the shop when the weather gets like this. So let's go downstairs, see what we got going today. We're back down the shop, and you know what I felt like doing today? I know it's crazy. I felt like doing a hammer. So I went through, I got a box down here. A good friend of the show by the name of Brian Peen sent this hammer in a while ago. And it's just a ball peen hammer, but it's a Vaughan. I like Vaughan hammers. Vaughan makes some of the best hammers here in the States. They're unbelievable. And Mr. Pete did a hammer factory tour. If you ever get to see it, I'll put a link in the description. That was one of my favorite Mr. Pete videos. Guy's amazing, Lyle. He's a amazing guy. Anyway, so let's take a look at this hammer, see what we can do. Okay, you know, I was just looking down here and I have this piece of wire I want to talk about. You know, here's where you're going to laugh. You know, like, look, I don't save all kinds of junk, but you see, this is the wire. You'll probably be familiar with this wire. This wire comes off the Chinese food containers, you know, those paper containers, and they have these for the handle. Now, whenever I get, you know, which isn't often, if I get rice or something, white rice, I take these wires off and I put them in my little bin over there, you know, using either the test cutters or something. But this is a hardened wire. It's for the diameter wire. This is not quite as hard as music wire or piano wire, but it definitely is a very strong wire. So it's always good to have, and you know, it's a nice piece to work with in case you have to wrap something up, or but it is strong. This Chinese container wire. Just if you have anybody else ever saw that wire and said, man, they make that pretty strong. Here's the hammer in question, and the handle is loose. You can see here. See, it's loose, but we all like ball peen hammers, right? Who doesn't like a good ball peen hammer? Handle's a little bit long for my like. You know, I always choke up on a hammer, but you know, this one's a little bit long. We'll see what we want to do with it, if we want to shorten it. For me, you can see it's got a little crop, but I want to save this handle. You know, that's the whole fun of doing a kind of a restoration. You can see how it sits over here, and it's loose. Like I said, it's loose, so first thing we got to do is we got to dig out these wedges, separate the head from the hammer, and then we'll work on both pieces. But you can see here the head. This is the part that you see here, the little facets here. They're all kind of weird. You know, I don't know. You see over here, like it's not even. I don't know when this was done. It looks kind of primitive for Vaughan. But let's see what we can do, if we can make it into a nice example of a nice hammer. Now if you look over here closely, you could see here we do have a wooden wedge that's in there. And we also have this steel wedge here and another pin. Somebody drove a nail down there to kind of try and tighten it up. So we got to pull these wedges out first, and sometimes you have to drill a hole here and here in order to get, I use vice grips to try and pull out this wedge. So let's try that. Okay, now using the vice grips and just gripping it out, you can pull that pin, and you can see that's a shame. You know, when you see somebody that uses a nail this long, that's a shame. You just want to, usually if you're going to drive something in, you don't want it to go too deep, because, you know, that just adds to splitting. But you see what we did here? We, you know, by cutting it in, now you can get the edge of the vice grip usually in here, and you have to adjust it right, and then you have to wiggle it back and forth. Wiggle it till that will loosen up and come out. Now, why I like a vice grip so much is these corners. Now, you know, you can really get in there and get a good purchase on that vice grip, and then again, grip it up close and wiggle it back and forth. You know, don't try and pull it straight up, because it's got to have some movement in there. Once you create that movement, it should, here we go, it's coming. Okay, there it is. That's an unusual wedge, huh? Never seen one like that before. Huh, I like it. And a lot of times I try and reuse the wedge. You know, you just grind the tip down, but this one's not in bad shape. But you see where we are now? Now we're going to see if we can get that hammer head off. Okay, we pulled it out. As you can see, we removed it. Now, if you look over here, we're going to bring it down a little bit more on that swell. so that we can expose fresh wood. We're going to cut the top off here. But first we're going to try and pick out that wedge, you know. Now, you see here, the wedges, using a dental pick, which these things are great. A lot of times, there, you can see that the wedge is loose here. So we'll pick this out on both sides. See, there's the wedge, because we're going to put a new wedge in. We'll pick out the wedge. We'll clean this up, sand it down, scrape it, and then do the head, and Bob's your uncle. Now we're going to take a little bit off the bottom of the handle. Like I said, it's a little bit long for my liking. Now, wood always has a tendency to clog the belt, so this is where this belt cleaner comes in handy. It's so satisfying. Okay, the handle's starting to look really good. If you look over here, you can see the amount of growth rings there are in this small piece of wood. That's old growth wood, and that's why this handle is really good to keep. Now we'll dry fit it back on the head of the hammer, and you could look here, you could make sure there's no gaps. You don't want any gaps around, but we're going to bang that through. And when we do, notice the top here, and you notice there's very little stick, about 1/8 of an inch sticking up. When we do drive that bottom of handle up, we're going to get about 1/4 of an inch there, and that's going to make a big difference, because we're going to cut all that waste off. And let's get to grinding the head now. Okay, here's our post-wire brush evaluation. You can see here that, look at this one I'm talking about. This had a rough life, this hammer, you know, but look at the, you know, the facets are just horrible on here. It's not a pretty hammer. I mean, I've had Stanleys that look so much better, the old ones, but I don't know where this came from or whatever. We're going to try and fix these facets up, get it evened out. You know, the ball's in good shape. It wasn't really beat on too bad, but it's just from the factory. Look at that. It's horrible, right? So let's see what we can do to just make this look presentable. We might lose the name. That's okay with me, you know, but I'm going to try and keep it, but we might lose it. I really want to get this thing so it looks pretty decent. Okay, now we're getting to the point where we're going to fix the handle to the hammer and to the head. Now you can see, you have to remember there's no gaps. You don't want any gaps on the bottom, but we're going to bang this in now from the bottom up. Remember, see now there's just a little bit sticking above. Watch when I bang it how much comes up. Okay, we drove that really hard into there. Look at that. And you can tell it's hard because you see that? You see that little curling up of the chest? That's what you want. We're just going to run an X-Acto blade over here and then just take that off. But that's what you want. You want a nice tight fit on the bottom. And we extended it up here. That's all going to come off. We're going to put the wedge in now. And then we'll deal with the handle. Okay, now we cut this wedge out of a piece of poplar. You can see a nice little wedge here. And you can see how it's going to fit in here, just like this. And you don't want it too wide, but you want it to fill up that void, you know. Now I'm going to use a trick I learned from a good friend of the show, Brian McGuire, because now if you try and hit this wedge in now, the inertia is going to pull the head off. So Brian said you just put the wedge down and you bang on the back of the handle, and this way you don't have that problems. But like I said, I put a little glue on here. Let's bang that in. Now, this is in real time, and I'm using the scroll saw. You could use any kind of saw, but what we're doing is we're going to trim this excess off along with the wedge and everything, and get all this split wood out of there, and you'll see how nice and tight it gets when you do that. And then we'll take it over to the belt sander and finish it off. Now, this is the wedge that actually came out of this hammer, and I know this is a little bit of overkill, but we're going to put this right back in here into same spot, but we're going to use the dake. Only because here we are at everybody's favorite, the dake, and I'm going to show you the setup right now. Okay, you can see we got the handle resting on some steel plates, and we're going to put this right under the ram and hopefully drive that right in one shot. Could I hammer this in? Absolutely, but like I said, you know, when you have a dake, it's just something to play with, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to make contact with the wedge, hopefully right in the middle of that piston here. I'm moving. Okay, there we go. See, now it's all set up. I'm not even holding it anymore. Now we're going to drive this down. Look how nice. Oh, that's just so sweet. We're not even registering on the meter. Just to show you, there's no pressure. So it's just going in there because it's in the same slot it was before. Only this time we got a different wedge in there. So we're going to push this down. Oh, how beautiful is that? Okay, we are down. Now we are registering a ton. I'm going to release the pressure. And okay, good. Now we just got to get this down a little bit. See what that looks like? We're just going to go down a little bit more. Now when you get down to about this point where you have that much wedge sticking out, that's when you tap it in with a hammer just to get it flush with the body of the hammer. Now you know my favorite part. Remember what this Vaughan ball peen hammer looked like before we started. And we are calling this project done. Now normally I'll do a little bit more on the handle, but you know, this is a 2-day turnaround, so we're basically going to focus on the head. But the handle did come out nice. That's only 1 coat of gun stock, 1 coat of shellac. It's we took it down with the steel wool a little bit. Now that we're ready for our 2 more coats, and that'll be good. You can see here, everything looks good. The handle's nice and tight. Look at this back here. We always like this here. Let me get a better view. Here we go. Now you can see here. Now this has been peened over the years when they were putting it, but look at how there's no gaps whatsoever. I mean, that's a nice tight. The wedge is in there tight. It took the form to all the wood. Super solid handle. These facets, this has to be the ugliest Vaughan that they ever put out from the factory. All these facets were horrible, but I was able to get them back somewhat. You see what, you know, it looks respectable, but it's so much better to start with a hammer that's a nice hammer to begin with, to try and regrind all these facets from scratch. But we did a decent job, and again, I wasn't trying to get a mirror finish, but it's presentable. It's brushed so it won't show the fingerprints. The face, look at the face, is real nice. Got the head. Everything looks, but there's a couple things we couldn't get out because they were just these. Normally I just keep going, but these were real deep and it would have changed the profile. And you know, this is a nice hammer now. And oh yeah, I did on purpose take the name off because when I was grinding it down, I could have left a little bit of the name. I said, you know what? I don't think Vaughan would be too happy with this hammer, so I'm going to take this off. I know that the original, whoever designed this hammer, would be really upset with the way them facets looked before. So I removed that name, and now it's just a standard ball peen hammer that I'll be using as a user. And I'm happy with the length, although I probably still will choke up a little bit because you know, a ball peen hammer is kind of a precision instrument. You're not wailing away. And if you are wailing away, a longer handle is not the key. You get a bigger hammer. So, and the back of it came out like a ball bearing, so very happy with that. Anyway, that's today's project, the ball peen hammer from Brian Peen. Thanks so much, and nice little hammer, and we'll see, we'll put it back into service. So in closing, like I said, I think that's the worst example of a Vaughan I've ever seen. Vaughan does make beautiful hammers, and a lot of Sears Craftsman hammers were made by Vaughan. Great company. Don't take this one as an example. This one was probably a Monday hammer, as they used to call them. Anyway, thanks very much for tuning in. Hope you have a great day. Take care now. Bye-bye.